banging pots and pans. I want to cover Yellowfang's family tree. I want to cover Yellowfang's family tree. I want to be an evil little goblin about Yellowfang's family tree. Someone ages ago suggested Yellowfang as a family tree. I've never read her super edition, so her family outside of Broken Star and Raggedstar are nobodies to me, which means I wasn't really interested in covering them. But, to be nice, I decided to go look them up anyway and see how hard it would be, and then proceeded to spend an entire bubble bath having the time of my life piecing it together. I want to cover Yellowfang's family tree. But first, so that you aren't stuck waiting for me to go bonkers on a distant relative of hers who's never going to show up, here's every cat I'll be getting my grubby little hands on today, bearing in mind that I do plan to do a sequel to this with more of her relatives later. This family tree wins the highest number of dead kittens award. Congratulations! Let's start at the top and work our way down. I'm willing to bet that Brackenfoot is the one everybody's curious about. He's described as a, quote, pale ginger tom with dark ginger legs. Oh god, okay, where do I even start with this? We're actually not gonna make him ginger at all. He's cinnamon now. Red is complicated, and we'll get to it later, but cinnamon is very simple. Cinnamon is coded by the B1 allele, it's recessive to chocolate, which is little b, and black, which is capital B. It's a very reddish brown, so it serves our purposes. What purposes would that be? Well, I'm glad you asked! First, how tabby works. A solid cat's hairs are also solid. This is coded by little a on the A locus. Little a is recessive to capital A. Capital A causes some hairs to become agoutis hairs, which are banded with pheomelanin, which is red, or cream if they're dilute. Because of the banding, those hairs look lighter from a distance. This turns black cats, for example, into black tabbies, better known as brown tabbies. Then there's modifiers that affect the shape of the pattern that the non-agouti stripe hairs take. On one locus, there's capital MC allele for the tiger-like mackerel, and recessive to it, the little MC for blotchy classic. On a separate locus, epistatic to both of those, is ticked, coded by capital TA. Ticked limits non-agouti hairs to just the face, legs, and tail. This lovely little friend here is golden. Its genetics are a little confusing. At the time that I did the research for my cat genetics series, I understood golden to be the result of wide banding, which is polygenetic, high wide banding, aka a lot of wide banding alleles on countless loci working together, lightens the agouti hairs, aka the non-stripe hairs of the cat so much that they turn golden, which looks kind of like a pale ginger. More recent studies have revealed a second cause of golden, a believed to be recessive gene in the Siberian breed, and a scant few others called Siberian sunshine, which also causes tabby's agouti hairs to appear gold. Because written out family trees like this are more fun when you can see the alleles on screen, I'm going to go with Siberian sunshine, as it's currently believed to be monogenetic, that is, controlled by a single locus. Sunshine is on the Corin locus, don't ask long story, and is represented by SG, which stands for Siberian gold or sunshine gold. Dominant to SG is N for normal. N does what it says on the tin. Normal tabby, no gold. What does the SG allele do to a non-tabby then? Nothing. The SG allele only affects agouti hairs. So, back to Brackenfoot. He's going to be a heterozygous, ticked, cinnamon golden tabby. That means the bulk of his body is a gentle, pale, goldeny color, but his face, legs, and tail have cinnamon stripes. It just so happens that his legs happen to have particularly thick, abundant stripes, making his legs appear as a darker reddish color than most of his body. When most tabbies have a lot of stripes, it's called busy, but lots of tick stripes gets a special name. High or heavy barring. It's mostly polygenetic, probably partially developmental, but for ticked, possibly affected by heterozygosity as well. What does this look like on his genotype? Well, he'll need at least one capital A in order to make him a tabby, then he needs at least one capital TA to make him ticked, and he gets a little TA too. He's also homozygous SGSG, since Siberian Sunshine is recessive. Lastly, he's homozygous B1B1 to make him cinnamon. And lastly, but for realsies this time, because I always forget about hair length, Brackenfoot is going to be short hair. Short hair is coded by the dominant capital L. He needs to carry the long hair recessive little l for his kids though, so he'll be heterozygous there. You are so welcome. His mate, Brightflower, is an orange tabby. Looks like it's time to go back to the explanation pit. Ginger is on the O locus and it's sex-linked, meaning that it exists on the X chromosome. Females generally have 2 X chromosomes, but males only have 1 because they got a Y chromosome instead. That means females have 2 O loci, but males only get 1. Ginger is coded by capital O, which is codominant to non-ginger's little o. That means females can be heterozygous, which produces a tortoiseshell, but males can only have one or the other, a capital O or a little o, so they can only be fully ginger or non-ginger, not both. Non-ginger is also referred to as black base, which can be black, chocolate, cinnamon, or any of their dilutions. Ginger and its dilution cream are called red base. That means Brightflower, as described, would have 2 capital O's to make her ginger. However, that would mean she only has capital O's to pass on to her kids. This is a problem because some of her kids don't have any ginger. I could play around and make her cinnamon, which can be a pretty good stand-in for Ginger when Ginger is impossible, but one of her kids is a tortoiseshell, so we're just gonna have to make her a tortoiseshell. Sorry, Bright Flower. She's mostly ginger, just a little bit of black, but still a tortoiseshell. I consider full-on cryptic torties to be cheating for my purposes because I find them, as an excuse, less fun. That's one capital O and one little o, and then for black, at least one capital B. Maybe she's carrying something here, maybe she isn't, we'll find out. She's also a tabby, so that's at least one capital A. Her wiki art is mackerel, so that means she's going to get at least one capital MC. Because she's mating with a tic tac, I'll go ahead and draw in her TA locus alleles too. She's homozygous little TA because she's not ticked. If she had any capital TAs, they'd hide her mackerel. Now, capital O is epistatic to little a. What that means is that ginger cats always look like tabbies, even if they don't have any capital TAs. With this in mind, she could be a little a non-tabby and still have stripes, but brown tabby tends to blend in a little better with red tabby than stark black does, so I'm keeping her genetically agoutis. She's also described as having a, quote, broad, flat face and a snub nose. In scientific terms, this means she's brachycephalic and probably has trouble breathing. This is a polygenetic trait, so we can't write any letters for it, but it's worth noting. I'm writing the script before drawing the tree, and let me tell you, I really struggled with drawing brachycephalic animals. Kind of nervous about it, honestly. Thanks to everyone who left a comment on my community post about this giving advice. It helps a lot. Anyway, I'm gonna make her long hair, so 2 little L's, and that's Bright Flower. On to the name of the game, Yellowfang, the first reason Bright Flower had to get tortied. Despite the bizarre name, Yellowfang is dark gray. To put that in genetics terms, she's blue. Blue is dilute black, that means she got her mom's capital B allele, which codes for black. However, her dad only has B1s on that locus, so he can only give her B1s. That means Yellowfang is carrying cinnamon. To turn that black into gray, she has to be dilute. Dilute is on the D locus, represented by little d. It's recessive to the non-dilute allele, capital D. So far, both Brackenfoot and Bright Flower have had at least one capital D because they themselves are not dilute. However, it's easy to say they're each carrying a recessive hidden little d. They both give their little d's to Yellowfang, turning her dilute. Same process for the agoutis locus. Yellowfang is a non-tabby, so she needs to be homozygous little a. Both of her parents are tabbies, but little a is recessive, so they'll both just carry it. They both pass their little a's onto Yellowfang, making her solid. Because she's solid, we can't see what's on her MC or TA loci. She could be any kind of tabby underneath her double little a's. We'll leave them deliberately blank for now. She's a long hair, so she has her dad's hidden recessive little L. Her mom only has little L's to give, so that works out perfect. Most complicatedly, ginger, or rather the lack thereof. Yellowfang is female with 2 X chromosomes. She gets her dad's single lonely little O just fine. If Bright Flower was still ginger all the way through, she'd have to give Yellowfang a capital O, which would take her ass to Torty Town. But since we changed Bright Flower to a Torty, Yellowfang can get Bright Flower's little O, making her homozygous non-ginger, sparing her of anything even remotely resembling yellow, dooming her name to nonsense and confusion, just as canon intended. Yellowfang also has her mom's horrible pug face and associated breathing problems. Again, this is polygenetic, so there's nothing to write down, but I'll mention it. 2 of her siblings were lucky enough to survive kithood, and 2 weren't. Let's cover the adults first. Nutwhisker is just described as brown. No tabby means 2 little A's, so same process as Yellowfang for that. I'm also going to make him short hair really quick before I forget. That means that he's getting Daddy Brackenfoot's single capital L, but since Mommy Bright Flower only has 2 little L's to give, Nutwhisker is going to be heterozygous on this locus. Now for the whole brown thing, I've mentioned chocolate a few times now. That's the little b allele, recessive to black's capital B, but dominant to cinnamon's B1. Nutwhisker can easily be solid brown if he's chocolate. Thankfully, this is really easy to pull off. Bright Flower has a single capital B allele, which is dominant to little b, so she can carry little b all secret-like. She gives that little b to Nutwhisker, then Daddy Brackenfoot gives him one of his B1s, since that's all he can give. Since B1 is recessive to little b, only little b expresses, making Nutwhisker chocolate. He's also going to get a capital D to stay non-dilute. Dilute chocolate is lilac, which he is not. It doesn't matter which parent he gets this from, since they both have one to pass. It doesn't matter what his second allele is here either, but I'm going to make him homozygous capital D. Why? So that I can say the sentence, the cat named Nutwhisker does not have a little d. So that was nice and simple. Their sister Rowanberry is a little more difficult, not because of her genetics, but because of her description. She's described as cream and brown. Cream is dilute ginger. Now the thing about dilute is that it affects the whole cat. You can't just have the ginger or the non-ginger be dilute. So remember lilac? Dilute chocolate. It has some variety. Sometimes it looks more grayish, sometimes it looks more brownish. It's up to the individual, and it's also up to the lighting. Rowanberry isn't, strictly speaking, described as dark brown, and especially next to her definitely blue sister Yellowfang, lilac looks comparatively brown. So Rowanberry is going to be a lilac tortie. She'll be chocolate via the same process as her brother, but dilute via the same process as Yellowfang. That turns her lilac. As for the cream, she'll be getting her dad's little o because that's the only X chromosome he's got. She also inherited mom's capital O. This makes her heterozygous, expressing both non-ginger and ginger. I'm going to keep her solid because her description doesn't call her a tabby, but let's take it one step further. Remember how ginger is epistatic to non-agoutis, so ginger always shows underlying tabby patterns even when there's no capital A to cause them? Remember how ticked makes most of the cat agouti hairs, rendering them almost completely stripeless? Remember how her dad is ticked? We can make Rowanberry appear to be totally solid by just conveniently placing her ginger away from where the stripes would be on her face, legs, and tail, or just by brindling it so much that it's hard to tell in those areas, but that's harder to draw. She's getting dad's capital TA to be a tick tabby, but she'll be heterozygous on account of mom's double little TAs. Because capital TA is epistatic to the MC locus, we have no idea what she's carrying here, and that's just fine. Polygenes play a major role in how many stripes a tick tabby has. I think Bright Flower is carrying low barring genes so that it's easier to hide Rowanberry's secret stripes despite her dad's thick, heavy barring. Her fur length isn't specified, so short hair it is. Same process as her brother. Apparently she fucked the guy who killed Spotted Leaf? I'm not covering their kids today, but damn, you got poor taste. Anyway, the dead ones are Marigold Kit and Mint Kit. Mint Kit is described as a small gray tom. We already did Yellowfang, so this will be Child's Play. Or, given how he died, Child's War? He's black, and then that black is diluted to blue, and then that blue is non-agouti. All through the same processes as Yellowfang. However, I'm going to make him a short hair with his dad's single capital L to help distinguish him a little. His process of being non-ginger also differs a bit. He's a tom, so unless he had time to figure out transhood before being murdered as a toddler, he only has one X chromosome. Dad gave him a Y chromosome instead, which has no O locus on it. In fact, it barely has anything on it. His only O locus then comes from mom. She gives him her little O, keeping him ginger-free. Marigold Kit is just tortoiseshell. No funny tricks here. She'll be getting mom's capital B for black, but Daddy Brackenfoot can only give B1, so she'll be heterozygous. She's solid through the same means as her siblings. She's getting dad's little O for non-ginger, but mom's capital O for yes ginger, making her tortoiseshell. For the sake of variety, I'll make her ginger, ghost, non-ticked mackerel, which means mom's capital MC, one of her little TAs, as well as dad's single little TA allele. Since Yellowfang's only had short hair siblings so far, I'll make Marigold Kit a long hair. She's getting one of mom's little L's and dad's single recessive little L. Doomed and non-doomed siblings all finished, let's get back to Yellowfang. Before the incident, her mate was Raggedstar, who, despite the most boring official art in the world, is pretty obviously supposed to be a long hair, so we're giving him two little L's just like Yellowfang. He's a broad-shouldered brown tabby tom despite not being related to Tigerstar. I'm going to make him a classic tabby to help differentiate them. As a reminder, classic is on the same locus as mackerel. It's coded by little MC, which is recessive to mackerel's capital MC. That means Raggedstar needs two little MCs in order to be classic. As mentioned earlier, a brown tabby is genetically a black tabby. That means he has at least one capital B for black. He also needs at least one capital D to stay non-dilute. Quick aside for Hal and Featherstorm, I was just gonna throw together some bullshit about turning Featherstorm Torby real quick, but the more I looked into their family tree, the more complicated it got. So instead, I'll cover them and all their baby daddy drama in a sequel video, eventually. Broken Star is Raggedstar too. He's just his dad, but with mom's swishy flat face. That means he's getting at least one capital B from either parent. He also gets his dad's capital D to stop him from becoming blue, but mommy Yellowfang, I hated saying that. His mom, Yellowfang, only has little d's, so Broken Star will be heterozygous on this locus. The same goes for Agouti. He's a tabby like his dad, so he gets his dad's capital A, but his mom can only give him little a's, so he'll be heterozygous. I want him to be classic, both to resemble Raggedstar and to not resemble Tigerstar. For that, he'll need two little MCs. Raggedstar can only give him little MCs because that's all he has, but what about Yellowfang? Yellowfang's parents are ticked and mackerel respectively. We're lucky here in that ticked is epistatic to classic, and classic is recessive to mackerel. Either parent can be hiding an MC allele and give it to Yellowfang, who's in turn hiding it underneath her solid. It doesn't matter which parent, and she only needs one. She gives it to Broken Star, keeping him classic. She also passes her breathing problems onto Broken Star. Yay! Both parents are long hairs, so they only have little L's to give, which means that Broken Star has to be long hair, which is good because he is. The broken tail thing probably happened in the womb, no genes there. Because Yellowfang is a terrible parent, her other kids are named Hopekit and Wishkit. Wishkit is pale ginger, which we can interpret as cream, which we can reinterpret as fawn. Fawn is dilute cinnamon, and it makes a great fake cream. I've used this trick a billion times by now, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Yellowfang's already got a spare B1 allele from her cinnamon dad, so all we need to do in order to make Wishkit cinnamon is plonk a B1 allele onto Raggedstar's B locus. To dilute that to fawn, she'll need little d's from both parents too. Yellowfang only has that, and Broken Star is now carrying one. Easy peasy kitten squeezy. Wishkit's a tabby, so that's coming from Raggedstar, but Yellowfang only has little a's, so that makes Wishkit heterozygous. As for pattern, she'll be classic, since Broken Star is already classic, so I won't need to rehash the process. She can only be a long hair because, as established, both parents are long hairs, so they only have little L's to pass. That goes for Hopekit too. Now, Hopekit is described as, quote, cream and gray. Uh-oh. That's a tortie, right? But Yellowfang doesn't have any ginger. Do we need to go back and give Yellowfang a capital O? Absolutely the fuck not. It's goblin mode time. I'm a vile little villain, and I'm about to do some insane shit to this dead fucking kitten. Welcome to my twisted mind. Technically, her description does not say tortoiseshell. It doesn't mention patches or brindling. It just says gray and cream. She has gray, and she has cream. Or at least, it looks like she has cream. She has a fur color that could be described as cream. A creamy color, if you will. A pale, yellowy color. Perhaps a little bit golden? Brackenfoot, my man! Gave Yellowfang his SG allele. She's heterozygous NSG. Now, SG is recessive, not to mention super rare. What are the chances of Raggedstar also carrying it? In this bullshit inbred colony, higher than 0! Golden dilutes just like any other color. On a non-dilute cat, golden is a gentle goldeny yellow. On a dilute cat, it's much paler and, dare I say it, creamier. Hope Kit got her dad's capital A and his weird carried SG allele. She has to get some of her mom's little A's, since that's all Yellowfang can give. Yellowfang also passed along her SG allele. And of course, the cherry on top, her dad's little O and her mom's little O. It's not really important to write out since it's a given, but I feel like being smug today. She'll be classic by the same means as Broken Star. This is partially because I like classic tabbies and think they're cute, and partially because her wiki sprite looks like a blue golden classic tabby. The sprite is actually what made the whole tree click for me. Anyway, that's Yellowfang's family tree. You can see why I had so much fun with this. As soon as I figured out Hope Kit, everything else just snapped into place. It was super satisfying. I'm glad I finally get to share it. So yeah, suggest more trees or something. Link in description on my current list of tree plans. Until next time, bye-bye!